He was standing right there, my father, asking the receptionist if his daughter worked in this building. He had no idea he was standing inside her company. No idea that the daughter he once dismissed was now the one signing paychecks. That moment, his confusion, his disbelief, was 6 years in the making. 6 years earlier, when I was desperate, broke, and trying to make rent, he and my mother refused to help me with $800. 2 weeks later, they paid off my brother's $30,000 credit card debt so he could start fresh. That was the day I decided I'd start fresh too, but not with their help. I walked away, disappeared from their world, and quietly built my own. My name is Claire Monroe, and I grew up in a comfortable suburb outside of Boston with my parents, Richard and Elaine, and my younger brother, Evan. From the outside, we looked like a family cut from a magazine. 2 successful parents, a perfect lawn, and 2 kids who, on paper, seemed equally loved. But if you've ever lived in a family where affection had a favorite, you know how misleading appearances can be. There was always an imbalance, subtle at first, until it wasn't. Evan was 3 years younger, but somehow always the center of attention. My parents' eyes followed him everywhere. Their voices softened for him. Their patience stretched for him. I, on the other hand, was the reliable one, the straight A student, the helper, the quiet achiever no one ever needed to check on. Evan could set the house on fire, and they'd hand him the lighter again to build confidence. I could win awards, and it was met with a polite smile and a reminder not to brag. I remember my 16th birthday. I'd been hinting for months about a laptop, something to help me code. When the day came, I got a $50 bookstore gift card. 2 months later, on Evan's 13th birthday, he got the newest gaming console, controllers, games, everything. When I asked about it, my mother gave me that tired smile and said, "You're older, Claire. You understand that your brother needs more encouragement." That word, encouragement, stung deeper than any insult. It told me everything I needed to know. In my family, effort was invisible unless it came wrapped in chaos. Graduation was no different. I was valedictorian, the top of my class. They came, of course, but left before I gave my speech because Evan had a baseball game. At dinner afterward, I listened as my father bragged about Evan's home run, while my own accomplishment disappeared into silence. Vacations followed the same pattern. If Evan wanted roller coasters, we went. If I suggested a museum, I was too serious. My father would laugh and say, "Relax, Claire. Life's not all about learning," but for me, it was. Because learning was the one thing they couldn't take credit for. Evan grew into a teenager who knew he could get away with anything. Bad grades, fights, even crashing my father's car. Every mistake came with a cushion, tutors, money, forgiveness. And every success I earned came with nothing more than a nod. So I did what quiet, overlooked kids do best. I built my own world. While Evan was out with friends, I was in my room teaching myself to code, writing small programs, and building websites just for fun. It started as escape, but deep down it was something else. It was preparation. I didn't know it then, but that glowing screen would become the foundation of everything. The empire my father would one day walk into, unaware that I was the one who built it. At 14, while most kids were trying to sneak extra screen time, I was already building one. My first real creation was a clunky little app that helped organize school assignments. Nothing fancy, just functional, efficient, mine. My computer science teacher said it was college-level work. My father said, "That's nice, honey," without even looking up from the TV. Evan was beside him, laughing at some video game, and that one moment told me everything. No matter how bright I shined, they'd never see the light. But the moment that truly cracked something inside me came 2 years later. Junior year. I'd just won a regional science competition for a project on data encryption, a big deal for any student, let alone a girl from a small public school. The local newspaper wanted to interview me. I ran home breathless with excitement, ready to share the news. My mother smiled and said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart, but can they reschedule?" Evan has a therapy appointment that day. He's been feeling anxious about his grades again. Anxious. That word always bought him freedom. That night, I cried myself to sleep. But when I woke up, I made myself a promise. From now on, I'd excel, not for their approval, but for my own satisfaction. Every forgotten "I'm proud of you" became fuel. Every quiet dismissal turned into a line of code, a late-night study session, a private vow. Because if love wasn't going to motivate me, revenge would. Not loud, not cruel, just success. Silent, undeniable success. So I pushed harder. Advanced placement classes, national tech competitions, hackathons before hackathons were cool. By senior year, I wasn't just top of my class. I was in a league of my own. Scholarship offers started arriving in glossy envelopes one after another. My guidance counselor called me one of the most promising students she'd ever worked with. At the awards ceremony, my parents actually showed up. For once, they clapped for me. My father even pulled me aside and said, "We're proud of you, Claire." For a moment, I let myself believe it, that maybe I'd finally earned it. But pride without presence is just a performance, and I would soon learn that their version of proud came with limits. For years, I lived in the illusion that if I worked hard enough, if I was perfect enough, they'd finally love me the way they loved Evan. But some equations never balance. In our family, favoritism wasn't a phase. It was the foundation. The cruelest part, even knowing that, I still loved them. I loved my mother's soft voice, my father's occasional warmth, and even Evan, who was more lost than malicious. He wasn't the villain. He was just the product of the environment that made me invisible. Still, I kept one last hope tucked away. That college would be my reset button. That once I stepped into adulthood, they'd finally see me as more than the self-sufficient one. And for a while, it almost looked that way. When my acceptance letter from Westbridge University arrived, one of the top computer science programs in the country, I thought this was it. A partial scholarship covered 60% of tuition. I could almost make it work. My parents had always talked about a college fund after all. They'd saved for years. I just needed a little help with the rest. Room, board, and what I thought was a small gap. But that gap would become the canyon that split us forever. I still remember the night I pitched my dream like a business plan. Every number, every chart, every carefully rehearsed sentence, I had prepared it all. Not because I doubted my ability, but because I knew convincing my parents would take proof. I didn't just want to go to college, I wanted to earn their support, for once in my life. After dinner, I spread my color-coded papers across the dining table, the prestigious program, projected salaries after graduation, my detailed budget. I had calculated everything, 20 hours of work per week, full-time in summers, personal expenses fully covered by me. All I needed was help with tuition and housing. My father leaned back in his chair, scanning the figures like an accountant reviewing bad news. That's a lot of money, Claire. Even with your scholarship, I kept my voice steady. I know, but it's one of the best computer science programs in the country. I can handle the workload, and I'm already planning to freelance on weekends. My mother folded her hands, voice soft. We always planned to help with college, sweetheart. We just didn't expect it to cost this much. After a long pause, they agreed to cover my housing and the rest of tuition for the first 2 years. After that, my father added, you might have to take out loans. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to get started. For the first time, I felt like the universe had cracked open a small door for me. I didn't realize then. It was only open halfway, and one day, they'd slam it shut. The night before I left for college, my mother hugged me tighter than usual. We're proud of you, Claire. You've always been so independent, that word again. Independent. The compliment that sounds like freedom but really means you're on your own. Still, I clung to the hope that this was the start of something new. When I arrived at Westbridge University, everything felt alive, buzzing with possibility. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language: logic, code, and late-night caffeine. I got a job at the university library, working just enough hours to keep my savings steady. That's where I met Sophie, another computer science major from California. She was sharp, funny, and confident in a way I'd never learned to be. She became my first real friend, the kind who didn't need me to prove my worth. You're brilliant, Claire, she told me once, after we aced a tough project. The way you think about systems is different. Her words hit deeper than she realized. For once, recognition didn't come with strings attached. In my sophomore year, I enrolled in advanced algorithms with Professor Hale, the kind of intimidating genius who rarely praised anyone. After I turned in an unorthodox solution to a complex problem, he asked me to stay after class. You have something rare, Claire, he said, real insight. Have you considered research or maybe an internship next summer? His encouragement lit a spark that became a wildfire. I applied for every competitive internship I could find and, with his recommendation, landed one at a growing tech startup. Everything felt like it was finally aligning. I should have known the universe never gives you peace without testing it. The cracks in my perfect plan started with one email. Subject line: your college expenses. The sender: Dad. That night, I called home expecting to talk numbers. Instead, my father's voice came through, flat and emotionless. Claire, we can't keep paying for your housing. Our financial situation has changed. My pulse quickened. What happened? Is everyone okay? Everything's fine, my mother said quickly. We've just had unexpected expenses. Her tone wavered. Too careful. I tried reasoning. Even $500 a month would help. My scholarship doesn't cover rent. We just don't have it, my father replied, firm as concrete. You're smart and resourceful, Claire. You'll figure it out. That sentence would echo in my head for years. The moment I stopped being their daughter and became their afterthought. I hung up the phone in silence. My library job barely covered groceries. To afford rent, I picked up a second job, waiting tables. Days blurred into exhaustion. Classes by day, library shifts in the afternoon, restaurant work till midnight. 5 hours of sleep on good nights, 2 on bad ones. My grades started slipping, dark circles etched themselves into my reflection. One night, Sophie found me asleep on my laptop. You can't keep this up, she said softly. I don't have a choice, I whispered. I need to pay rent. Spring break came. While everyone else went home, I picked up double shifts. The restaurant lights blurred at closing time, my hands trembling as I counted tips. That night, I called home again. "Mom, I'm struggling," I admitted. "I'm working 2 jobs. I can't keep up. Can you help, even a little?" "I'm sorry, honey," she said, her voice cracking. "We just don't have the money right now." "Everything's tight." Something in her tone didn't sound like struggle. It sounded like guilt. "How's Evan?" I asked slowly. "Still at college?" Silence. Then, "Actually," she said carefully, "Evan decided the college wasn't for him. He's taking some time to figure things out." My stomach dropped. "So he dropped out?" Before she could answer, my father's voice cut in on speaker. "Not everyone takes to higher education the way you do, Claire." That was the moment everything clicked. They didn't run out of money. They ran out of excuses. I sat on my dorm bed, staring at the phone, my mind spinning. Evan had dropped out of college, but my parents still couldn't help me with rent. He'd had a full ride because of Dad's alumni status, meaning they hadn't been paying a cent for his tuition. So where had all their money gone? The answer would arrive sooner than I expected, and it would burn away the last fragile hope I had of being treated equally. Thanksgiving break came like a mirage. I was exhausted, 2 jobs, endless assignments, and a GPA. I was barely holding together, but the idea of a hot meal and a warm bed pulled me home. Sophie had invited me to California with her family, but I couldn't afford the plane ticket, so I climbed onto a midnight bus back to Boston, clutching my worn-out backpack and the naive belief that maybe this holiday would be different. I arrived late Wednesday night. The house was dark, still. My old key still fit the lock. I tiptoed inside, expecting everyone to be asleep, until I heard voices drifting from the kitchen. I almost called out a greeting, almost. Then I heard my brother's name and froze. Instinctively, I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. "Do you think we did the right thing with Evan's debt?" My mother's voice floated through the doorway. "What choice did we have?" my father replied. He couldn't move forward with $30,000 hanging over his head. This way he can start fresh $30,000. My heart thudded like a drum. That was more than enough to cover my housing for the rest of college. I gripped the wall as my mother sighed. "I just hope he's more responsible this time. That's a lot of money for someone his age." "He promised he's learned his lesson," my father said. "Everyone deserves a second chance. He's got that new job interview next week. Now he can focus without the stress." A sharp sound escaped me, maybe a breath, maybe a sob. The conversation stopped dead. I stepped into the kitchen, my hands trembling. My mother's eyes went wide. "Claire, we didn't hear you come in. How was your trip?" I couldn't do small talk. "You paid off Evan's credit card debt." $30,000. My parents exchanged uneasy glances. "It's complicated," my father began. "Is that why you can't help me with $800 a month for rent?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Because you gave Evan $30,000 to erase his mistakes?" "That's not fair," my mother protested. "Evan was in a very difficult situation." "And what am I in?" I snapped. "I'm working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, maintaining a 3.8 GPA in one of the toughest programs in the country. I've never asked for anything except the support you promised me." "You've always been self-sufficient," my father said, his tone maddeningly calm. "Evan needs more help than you do. He's not as resilient." "Not as resilient?" I repeated, incredulous. "Or just your favorite?" "That's enough," my father warned. We don't play favorites. We give each of you what you need." "What I need is exactly what you promised me," I said, tears streaming down my face. "But apparently your promises to me don't matter as much as bailing Evan out of his self-created problems." At that moment, Evan walked into the kitchen and froze. "Claire, I didn't know you were coming home tonight." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, for perhaps the first time. He wasn't malicious. He was just the product of years of being rescued. "Congratulations on your fresh start," I said bitterly. "Must be nice to have $30,000 of bad decisions erased." Evan's face flushed with shame. "I didn't ask them to." "It doesn't matter if you asked," I cut him off. "They did it." Meanwhile, I'm killing myself working 2 jobs because they can't even honor their promise to me. "Claire, you're being dramatic," my mother said. "We've supported you plenty over the years." Something inside me snapped. "Name one time you've supported me the way you support Evan. One time you've put my needs first." Silence. Heavy. Deafening. "That's what I thought," I whispered. I grabbed my bag from the hallway. "Where are you going?" my father called after me. "Somewhere I'm actually wanted." I pulled out my phone, texting Sophie as I walked toward the door. My mother followed, her voice breaking. "Claire, don't leave like this. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow." "I'm not hungry," I said coldly, stepping out into the night. I didn't sleep that night. I folded into the corner of Sophie's couch, the city humming outside, and let the kind of sobs out that steal your breath. The truth finally landed. My family hadn't just overlooked me. They had chosen to invest in my brother's mistakes over my future. Sophie stayed on campus for the break to finish a project and opened her door without hesitation. I spilled everything: the $30,000 payoff, the rent refusal, the kitchen confrontation. The weight of it pressed down until I could barely speak. "You're not the problem," she said, steady as a lighthouse. "They're making a huge mistake. You're the most determined person I know. One day they'll regret this." The days that followed turned dark. Waking up felt like lifting a boulder. I missed classes for the first time in my life. My grades slid. One afternoon, I sat on the edge of my bed and considered dropping out. Why keep grinding for a degree my own parents refused to value? This wasn't a collapse. It was the last quiet moment before a reset. The life I wanted still existed. I just had to choose it without them. Professor Hale noticed my empty seat and emailed me. I almost ignored it, but showed up to office hours anyway. "Claire," he said after I explained the mess, "you're one of the most promising students I've taught. Don't let a personal crisis rewrite your future." "I'm working 2 jobs," I admitted. "I can barely stay awake in class." He didn't scold me or offer pity. He offered options. "Consider a different structure. Remote development work exists, and it pays better than campus jobs. With your skills, you can find something flexible enough to keep your studies intact." That conversation became a lifeline. It reframed the problem and handed me a door I hadn't seen yet. That night, I made a decision that would redraw the map of my life. I would not depend on my parents for anything: money, approval, permission. I would build my future on my own terms and succeed. Not to spite them, but to free myself from them. The pain didn't vanish. It hardened into resolve. They had underestimated me for years. The next chapter would show them, and more importantly, show me exactly what I was capable of. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I dragged myself to a campus tech meetup. The keynote speaker, Daniel Mercer, told a story that sounded like oxygen. years of remote work for startups, then his own consultancy, freedom of schedule, meaningful pay, control over his time. After the talk, I walked up to him. "Your path is exactly the structure I need. I'm a student, but I'm ready for remote work." He scanned my badge. "Computer science?" "Since 12, I said. "JavaScript, Python, Ruby." His eyebrow lifted. "Impressive. Send me your portfolio. I know a few companies hiring part-time developers who work around class schedules." I went home and rebuilt my portfolio overnight. Clean repos, crisp case studies, measurable results. I sent it at sunrise. 3 days later, Daniel connected me with the CTO of CodeBridge, a growing dev shop looking for help on their back-end systems. The process was brutal in the best way. 3 technical rounds and a take-home challenge. I poured everything into it because this wasn't just a job. This was independence knocking. 1 week later, an email arrived that changed everything. $25 an hour, 20 hours a week, fully remote. The words blinked on my laptop screen like a lifeline. For the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving on someone else's permission. I was earning my own freedom. It was double what I'd made, juggling 2 dead-end jobs. I gave notice that same day, no hesitation, no second thoughts. I was done scraping by. My next step was to make it official. I met with my academic advisor to rearrange my entire course schedule. Westbridge University had recently expanded its online offerings, and though I couldn't finish the whole program remotely, I could take enough digital classes to make it work. "It's unusual," my advisor admitted, scanning my proposal. "But given your record, we'll make it work." That sentence felt like validation, not just academically, but existentially. Someone finally saw me as capable of managing my own path. I'd spent years trying to earn my parents' trust. Ironically, I only found it once I stopped needing it. But freedom came with a price, and I was ready to pay it. I packed my life into the trunk of my used Honda Civic and made a decision that terrified and thrilled me at the same time. I was leaving Pittsburgh. After researching cities with lower rent and fast internet, I landed on Columbus, Ohio, practical, affordable, anonymous. A blank slate. A small studio near the university cost $500 a month. Less than half my rent before. For once, I could breathe. I could even save. The night before the move, I drafted a single message to my parents. "I've found a way to support myself through school without your help. Please don't try to contact me. I'll reach out when, or if, I'm ready. Claire." I didn't wait for a reply. I powered off my phone, tossed it into a drawer, and hit the road with Sophie riding shotgun. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as we unloaded boxes into my new apartment. I nodded. "I'm sure. I need to prove I can do this on my own. No safety net, no excuses." That first night alone, it hit me. Independence wasn't peaceful. It was loud, messy, exhausting. But it was mine. My days became military precision. Work from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., classes from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., study until 8 p.m., freelance until 10 p.m. It was relentless, but for the first time, the exhaustion meant something. Every hour of coding, every bug I fixed, every late-night debug session, it was all building me. Daniel became my quiet mentor, checking in through video calls. "You've got serious talent," he said once, "but what stands out isn't your skill, it's your grit. Most people quit when things get hard. You don't." Those words stayed with me. They healed something small and silent inside, the part of me that had always wondered if I was enough. Months passed, my grades recovered, my depression lifted, and my confidence sharpened into steel. I stayed close to Sophie and Professor Hale, who both supported my decision to go no contact. My parents never replied, not a text, not an email, just silence. And that silence said everything. In the hierarchy of their love, I had always ranked beneath my brother. But while they stayed still, I started to build. While coding for CodeBridge, I saw a pattern. Students like me, drowning in debt and confusion with no tools built for them. So on weekends, I began sketching an idea, a financial planning app made for students, one that tracked expenses, matched scholarships, and projected repayment timelines. It started as a side project, but it would soon become the foundation of something far greater, the beginning of my empire. The prototype sat glowing on my laptop screen, rows of clean code, a dashboard full of potential. When I showed it to Daniel, he leaned in, studying every detail. "This has serious potential," he said, tapping the screen. "The student market's wide open. You're solving a problem no one's truly touched." I shrugged it off. "It's just a side project. Something to sharpen my skills." Daniel smiled, the kind of smile that said he saw further than I did. "Claire," he said, "don't sell yourself short. This could be so much more if you let it." Those words planted a seed, and once it was there, I couldn't unsee it. What if this little side project could become something real? Something bigger than me, bigger than every no I'd ever been given. It sounded impossible, but then again, so had surviving college alone. So I started learning. Late nights turned into early mornings as I devoured online business courses, market analysis, startup funding, scalability. Every spare hour went into refining the code and studying what made other financial tools fail students. By junior year, I wasn't the girl crying in a dorm room anymore. I was a woman on a mission, sharp, focused, and unstoppable. The pain of betrayal hadn't vanished, it had transformed, from heartbreak into horsepower. Every time I thought about my parents or my brother, it didn't ache anymore. It fueled me. On holidays, I'd still wonder if they ever thought about me, if my brother had grown up, or if my parents regretted their choice. But those thoughts started to fade, like static in the background. I was too busy building something of my own to look back. 3 years blurred by in a rush of code, coursework, and caffeine. By the time I graduated from Westbridge University, I'd done what most people thought was impossible. Finished my degree with honors, mostly online, while climbing the tech ladder. My role at CodeBridge had evolved from part-time coder to full-time senior software engineer. The raise changed everything. I upgraded my apartment, built savings, and invested every extra dollar into developing my app, now officially named ScholarPath. By graduation, it wasn't a side project anymore. It was a fully functional beta, tested by a small group of students at Ohio State. Their feedback was electric. They loved the scholarship matching algorithm, one I built to filter through thousands of programs and find funding most students didn't even know existed. They loved the debt visualizer, a simple graph that showed how today's spending shaped tomorrow's freedom. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just code. It was impact. And right when it felt like the dream might stay small forever, opportunity knocked again. Daniel introduced me to Michael Jensen, an angel investor with a reputation for brutal honesty and a sixth sense for startups that could actually scale. "He's looking for something new in financial education," Daniel said. "I think ScholarPath might be exactly that." We met in a quiet corner of a Columbus cafe. I opened my laptop, hands steady, voice calm, walking him through my deck and a live demo of the app. When I finished, Michael sat back, unreadable. "The student finance space is crowded," he said. "What makes your solution different?" I was ready for that one. "Most apps treat students like small adults," I explained, "but we're not shrinking a financial system to fit them. We're rebuilding one for them." ScholarPath understands the student journey. It speaks their language. I showed him data. Average users finding $8,000 more in scholarship matches, retention spikes, early testimonials. He asked about acquisition, scaling, revenue models, all the things I'd studied obsessively at 3 a.m. And for once, I had every answer. When it was over, Michael leaned back, smiling faintly. "Most founders I meet," he said, "have either technical skills or business sense. Rarely both." He paused. "You're the exception, Claire." 2 weeks later, I got the call. Michael's voice was calm, but his words flipped my world upside down. "I'd like to lead your first round, $500,000 at a $2 million valuation." $500,000. For something that started as code scribbled between classes. It didn't feel real, but it was. My side project was now a funded startup. I left CodeBridge the following Monday. It was terrifying, walking away from stability into a future that existed only because I dared to believe in it. My first move as founder was to build a tiny team, a front-end developer, a marketing specialist, and one brave customer support rep. We rented a corner in a downtown Columbus co-working space that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. The next 6 months became a blur of 14-hour days, endless debugging, strategy calls, caffeine highs, and quiet 3 a.m. breakdowns I never let anyone see. There were technical disasters that made me question my competence, team arguments that tested my patience, and fleeting moments when I wondered if I'd pushed my luck too far. But quitting? Never an option. Every late night, I remembered the girl who had once begged her parents for $800 in rent. Now I was signing contracts worth hundreds of thousands, built from nothing but grit, sleepless nights, and belief. When Sophie flew in from San Francisco for launch week, it felt symbolic, the full circle moment from couch to company. "I always knew you'd do something big," she said, hugging me before the launch party. "But this is another level." ScholarPath officially launched that September, and the response hit like a tidal wave. TechCrunch, Forbes, EdTech Digest. Our inbox exploded overnight. Within 3 months, we hit 50,000 active users and were growing 20% month over month. Our model was simple but powerful, free for students, revenue from banks and financial partners. We licensed our scholarship matching algorithm to universities across the country. Each milestone, our first 100,000 users, our first $1 million in revenue, our expansion into Canada, felt like proof that I'd been right to trust myself when no one else had. Exactly 1 year after launch, Michael arranged a meeting with a group of venture capitalists in New York. They were sharp, intimidating, the kind of people who could make or break your company with a single nod. After tense negotiations, we closed $8 million at a $20 million valuation. That money became rocket fuel. We hired aggressively, built new features, and finally moved into a real office. Glass walls, bold colors, a skyline view. I started speaking on panels, appearing in podcasts, and giving talks at tech conferences. People called me the face of fintech innovation. No one knew the story behind the smile. When a Wall Street Journal reporter asked what inspired ScholarPath, I simply said, personal experience. I saw how financial stress destroys potential. I wanted to change that. When the article came out, it called me the wunderkind of financial technology. The photo showed me confident, smiling, composed, everything I'd worked to become. And yet, that night, staring at the headline, I felt a quiet ache. Because the people who once made me feel small weren't there to see it. I had kept my distance for years. No calls, no messages, just the occasional late-night Google search. My brother Evan seemed to drift from job to job, never lasting long. My father Thomas was still at the same firm, but LinkedIn showed no promotions. My mother had all but vanished from the digital world. By year 3, ScholarPath had grown to 30 employees and over 1 million users across the US and Canada. We were profitable, something few startups could claim. It felt like the world had finally tilted in my favor. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. We were expanding east, and I chose Philadelphia. On paper, it made perfect sense. Affordable, strategic, close to major universities. But deep down, I knew what it really was. A test. Could I walk back into the city that had once made me feel invisible and not flinch? I flew in a week early to oversee the new office setup, a renovated warehouse in Center City, all glass and concrete and light. It was surreal being back, only a short drive from the suburb I once called home. I wasn't here for reconciliation. I was here to prove to myself that I didn't need it. One morning, I sat in a cafe near the office, reviewing partnership proposals, when a snippet of conversation froze me mid-sip. Thomas Wilson, yeah, I heard he got laid off last month. Tough market for the older finance guys. I almost dropped my cup. My father's name, same industry, same city. Coincidence? It didn't feel like one. I shifted closer, pretending to check my phone. What's he doing now? One voice asked. Not sure. His son's living with them again. Some fallout with a roommate or something. My pulse quickened. It had to be them. My father, unemployed. My brother, back home. I pulled out my phone, hesitated, then typed my childhood address into Zillow. Pre-foreclosure. I leaned back, stunned. My family, the ones who once couldn't spare $800 for me, were drowning in debt. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction. Another part, something quieter. A flicker of concern I didn't expect, because no matter what they'd done, they were still my family. For days I wrestled with it, the thought of reaching out. Each night I'd open a blank email and stare at the cursor, my name sitting cold at the bottom of my company's website for anyone to find. If they needed me, they'd know how. So I closed the laptop, letting silence make the choice for me. The ball was in their court. The morning of our Philadelphia office launch was crisp and bright, the kind of morning that felt like the start of something. We'd planned a small ceremony with local university partners and business leaders. I stood in the lobby rehearsing my welcome speech when our receptionist, Amanda, approached quietly. "There's a gentleman asking for you," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment. Says he's here about job opportunities for his daughter." Something about the phrasing made my pulse skip. When I looked toward the reception desk, I froze. Standing there, older, thinner, defeated, was my father. 6 years of distance collapsed into a single heartbeat. He hadn't seen me yet. I was half hidden behind a marble column, holding my breath like a ghost watching the living. "What's his name?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Thomas Wilson," Amanda said softly. "Should I tell him you're busy?" A strange calm settled over me. heavier than anger. "No," I said, "I'll speak with him." My heels clicked against the marble as I crossed the lobby. He turned at the sound. Confusion flickered in his eyes, then disbelief, then recognition. "Claire," he whispered. "Hello, Dad," I said evenly. He blinked, struggling to process the woman standing in front of him. Gone was the quiet college girl in thrift store clothes. Now there was a poised CEO in tailored black, hair sleek, expression unreadable. "I understand you're looking for job opportunities," I said. He stared at me, speechless. You work here?" A small, almost pitying smile touched my lips. "I own here." Scholar Path. "I'm the founder and CEO. The color drained from his face. "You own it? But how? When?" "It's a long story," I said. 6 years long, actually. People were beginning to notice. Curious eyes lingered. I gestured toward a glass conference room. "Let's talk in private." Inside, my father sank into a chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Claire, I can't believe this," he said softly. "We've been trying to find you for years." "Not very hard," I replied coolly. "I haven't exactly been hiding. My company's been featured in Forbes, the Journal, even TED Talks. If you wanted to find me, you could have." Shame crossed his face. "We thought after your message, you didn't want anything to do with us." "I didn't," I admitted, "for a long time. But tell me, what brings you here, applying for jobs for your daughter, when you haven't spoken to yours in 6 years?" He sighed heavily. "I didn't know it was you. I got laid off. The company downsized. It's been hard finding work at my age. I heard this tech firm was hiring and—" He glanced around, voice faltering. "I never imagined it was yours." "And Evan?" I asked quietly. "Still living at home?" He looked startled that I knew. "Yes," he said after a pause. "He's had trouble finding his footing." "Still starting fresh," I muttered, unable to hide the edge in my tone. "Claire," he began, then stopped, struggling. Finally he said it, the words I'd once begged to hear. "We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. The way we treated you. I see it now. It took you losing your job and facing foreclosure to see that?" His head snapped up. "How did you know about the foreclosure?" "I have resources now, Dad," I said evenly. "I know a lot of things." He slumped further in his chair. "Then you know how desperate things are. Your mother's working again, part-time as a receptionist. Evan's delivering pizzas, and me." His voice cracked. "I'm here begging for work from my own daughter, the one I drove away." Once I had fantasized about this exact scene, them in need, me in power. But standing there now, I felt no triumph, just a strange, hollow ache. "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. "Why pay off Evan's debt, but leave me drowning?" He was silent for a long time. Finally he said, "Because we thought you'd succeed no matter what. You were so capable, so strong. Evan, he was drowning. We thought he needed us more." I shook my head. "That's not a reason. That's an excuse. You failed me as parents. You broke your promise when I needed you most." "I know," he whispered, "and I've regretted it every day. Your mother cried for months. We tried to find you, but you were gone." "I didn't disappear," I said quietly. "I rebuilt without you." Just then, a soft knock came at the door. It was my assistant. "Miss Wilson," she said, her voice hesitant. A soft knock at the door broke the tension. "The opening ceremony is about to begin," my assistant said. "Everyone's waiting." I nodded. "Thank you, I'll be right there." Then I turned back to my father. He stood, eyes heavy with years of regret. "Claire, please, can we talk more? Your mother would want to see you." I held his gaze, the same eyes I'd spent half my life trying to impress. "I'll be in Philadelphia for 2 weeks," I said quietly. "I'll think about it." As I reached for the door, his voice followed. "Claire, are there really job openings here?" I paused. "Yes," I said, "but I don't hire people as favors, not even family. Especially not family." And with that, I stepped into the lobby, into the light, the applause, the company I built from the ground up. Behind me, my father stayed frozen, a man staring at a world that no longer belonged to him. Sometimes I still see him standing there, in the lobby of my company, looking at the daughter he never believed in. But now I finally understand. That moment wasn't revenge. It was release. 4 years have passed since that day. Scholar Path has grown beyond anything I once dreamed in my tiny Columbus apartment. We went public last year at a $50 million valuation, a number that still feels surreal. But success doesn't erase the past, it just gives you a different view of it. After that encounter, I eventually met my mother again. She cried when she saw me, whispering apologies between shaky breaths. That first conversation wasn't easy, but it was honest. And honesty, I've learned, is how healing begins. My father works at our Philadelphia office now, not as an executive, but as part of the support team, helping users navigate their finances. It humbled him, I think, to rebuild from the bottom the way I once had to. Evan came around too. He started in an entry-level role, angry at first, defensive, but slowly, painfully, he grew into someone new. He leads our user education program now, teaching responsibility to students who remind me of us both. My mother volunteers with our financial literacy program for women, helping others find the freedom she once lacked. And for the first time in my life, my family feels balanced. Daniel and I found each other again at a tech conference. What began as mutual admiration became something deeper, steadier. We married last spring. Sophie, the friend who once gave me her couch when I had nothing, stood beside me as my maid of honor, and now stands beside me every day as COO of Scholar Path. Our lives have become a reflection of what we once needed most: stability, respect, purpose. But the part of my journey that means the most isn't the company's success or the money. It's the Claire Wilson Scholarship Foundation, which gives full-ride scholarships to students who have the talent but not the support. Every year I meet them, the dreamers, the fighters, and tell them what I once needed to hear. Your family's approval is not your permission to succeed. Build anyway. I stopped needing their apology the moment I realized I'd already outgrown their world. The truth is, pain doesn't vanish with time or triumph. It lingers, quieter, perhaps, as a reminder of who you used to be and what it took to become who you are. The scars stay, but they no longer ache. They guide. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means turning the broken pieces into something useful. The life you once wished someone had built for you. And sometimes it means letting the past catch up, just long enough to see that you no longer live there. The greatest freedom doesn't come from revenge. It comes from realizing you survived what was meant to stop you and turned it into something extraordinary. I don't dream about what could have been anymore. I'm too busy living what is. Somewhere between the silence of my past and the noise of my success, I found peace.